If you've been on YouTube or social media for the past several years, you've probably seen or heard of Jordan Peterson. He's a clinical and research psychologist who exploded into the spotlight for his opposition to Canada's Bill C-16. Since then, he's made countless appearances on podcasts, television, and numerous book tours around the world. To his supporters, he is a leading figure on the discourse over self-improvement and the crisis of meaning experienced in modern society, particularly among young men. His efforts to explain the importance of living a well-ordered and meaningful life, using religious and mythical metaphors, has helped him stand out from the legions of self-improvement gurus. To his detractors, he's a part of a new wave of right-wing commentators that are leading a generation of young men astray. For the most part, his supporters tend to lean center-right, while his detractors usually lean left-wing. Due to his frequent usage of religious symbols, particularly Christianity, he has many atheist detractors who question the utility of religious symbols in the modern world. But to his Christian fans, he has helped usher in a renaissance in Christianity among young people after decades of secularization. However, Jordan Peterson has also taken criticism from Christians for his ambiguous usage of Christianity in his messaging. In particular, Peterson's reluctance to boldly declare his faith in Jesus and his refusal to affiliate with any denomination has drawn much skepticism from critics. Both atheists and Christians point out that Peterson frequently avoids stating whether he believes in the historicity of biblical miracles. When the atheist Richard Dawkins asked him point blank if he believes Jesus was born from the Virgin Mary, Peterson avoids answering the question directly. From an atheist point of view, this is evidence that Peterson doesn't want to admit that he is actually an atheist who doesn't believe in Christian miracles. But from a Christian point of view, Peterson might also be an interloper who co-opts Christian messaging to promote his own secular agenda. Or at the very least, he isn't a true Christian. Therefore, Christians should be skeptical of his religious framing. Regardless of whether one is a Christian or a non-believer, it isn't hard to understand why many would be skeptical of his appeals to religion. As the old biblical proverb goes, "You will know a tree by the fruit that it bears." By this standard, Jordan Peterson has failed to produce evidence that he is committed to any clear Christian theology. However, it is also worth noting that just because a tree bears fruit doesn't mean we will successfully identify what that fruit is. If we're unable to identify what the fruit is, how can we identify what the tree is? What fruits has Peterson's tree borne? In Peterson's case, his work has inspired countless young followers to leave behind the empty hedonistic nihilism of their youth and take on responsibility and truth as the cure to their modern existential problems. Peterson's meteoric success and status as one of the most popular and influential thinkers of the past decade is evidence that he at least has made a huge impact on the lives of his followers. Yet that still doesn't explain why he is so reluctant to give a simple answer as to whether he believes biblical events really happened. Perhaps that is because Peterson's interpretation of the Bible is very different from most Christians and atheists. Unlike many Protestant Christians and atheists, Peterson does not take a literalist interpretation of the Bible. His non-literal interpretation of the Bible acknowledges the fact that the Bible is not one book, but an anthology of books that documents man's evolving understanding and struggles with God and faith. That is, the Bible was written by numerous authors from various time periods and perspectives. It spans numerous genres and cannot be neatly categorized as fiction or non-fiction, especially since the Bible mixes well-documented historical events like the Babylonian conquest with biblical narratives about the founding of the Kingdom of Israel, as well as the creation of the world itself. The Bible makes no clear distinction as to where biblical narratives end and history begins. Peterson's interpretation of the Bible reflects this ambiguity. To complicate things further, the miracles that are described in the Bible to a non-believer appear to be fantasy. However, Peterson's psychoanalytic approach to the Bible has revealed that the Bible can't just be interpreted as a book of historical or scientific facts. Instead, it seems to suggest that the Bible is more focused on moral transcendent truth rather than material truth, that the narrative about the Jews escaping slavery in Egypt is more than just a historical account. It is a lesson in the perennial struggle between clinging to the familiarity of servitude and mediocrity versus venturing into the uncertain wilderness of freedom and fulfillment. As a clinical psychologist, Peterson tends to focus on how myth and religion reveals truth about human existence and how they can be used to motivate people to change their lives for the better. In his experience, getting people to adopt responsibility and seek virtue has an almost salvational effect on those who practice it. Although Peterson has no empirical evidence for biblical narratives, he believes the biblical narratives are fundamentally true, and their ability to heal people and provide them with the strength, courage, and conviction needed to overcome life's tribulations. Thus, Peterson is at a crossroads where his secular side remains somewhat skeptical of biblical miracles, being unsure if they are literal or metaphorical. But at the same time, the Bible's ability to reflect the depths of human psychology thousands of years before the advent of psychology as a scientific discipline is not something that can be ignored. That, combined with the Bible's ability to transform lives when properly followed, seems to indicate potential divine inspiration in Peterson's estimation. To understand Peterson's beliefs about Christianity, one must first understand what he doesn't believe about Christianity. First and foremost, Peterson rejects the beliefs-based approach to Christian faith espoused by many Christians, particularly Protestants. As a clinical psychologist, Peterson is more interested in how religion can guide people to act in ways that improve their lives, not just merely professions of abstract belief. In his book 12 Rules for Life, Peterson references Nietzsche's pivotal role in deconstructing Christianity. Nietzsche, a former Lutheran, criticized Christianity's inability to adequately defend itself from the rise of science, especially in light of modern scientific discoveries that contradict biblical narratives. The advent of the scientific method provided a means for discovering objective truth that left the educated struggling to maintain faith in a religion that seemed obsolete as a purveyor of truth. But most decisively, Nietzsche condemned the Christian insistence on prioritizing salvation in the afterlife, while downplaying the importance of life in the material world. As a result, Christianity left countless material issues unresolved, such as poverty, famine, disease, and child mortality. Thus, Christianity's shortcomings facilitated the rise of science, which could better resolve those material issues through the advent of new technology and scientific breakthroughs. Furthermore, Peterson references Dostoevsky's criticisms of Christianity. Dostoevsky, despite being a Christian, was highly critical of the church in his work The Brothers Karamazov. Like Nietzsche, Dostoevsky was critical of the Christian tendency to water down the true meaning of faith in favor of mere appeals to a belief in Jesus. That is, he disagreed with the notion that Jesus' death on the cross permanently removed the burden of sin from everyone's shoulders, therefore removing the responsibility for sin from every Christian who professed faith in Jesus. In practice, this meant that Christians no longer had to embody and practice the teachings of Christ. Just merely professing it was enough for one to achieve salvation. In other words, just virtue signaling about Jesus was all it took for one to go to heaven, regardless of how unvirtuous one lived one's life. Thus, problems like slavery, poverty, war, greed, and corruption could be tolerated as long as one professed faith in Jesus. Meanwhile, a virtuous non-believer would be condemned to hell simply because he didn't believe in Jesus. Like Dostoevsky, Peterson argues that true faith in Christ goes far beyond just mere belief in Christ. Just as works without faith is dead, faith without works is also dead. Genuine faith in Christ means fully embodying Jesus' teachings in one's everyday life. Faith is to be practiced in the material world, not just professed in one's mind. In Peterson's estimation, faith in Christ means adopting full responsibility for one's contributions to all the problems of the world. Just as Christ took on the sins of the world upon his shoulders, his followers must also be willing to do the same. It means striving to improve oneself, not just merely for self-gain or expedience, but for the sake of improving the world in which we live. Being a true Christian means practicing what one preaches. It means dedicating one's life to pursuing not just factual truth, but moral truth as the pinnacle of one's hierarchy of value. Another key to understanding Jordan Peterson's view of God is his conceptualization of the hierarchy of value. Every human being, regardless if they are religious or secular, believes in the hierarchy of value. In the top ranks of the hierarchy of value, one commonly finds things such as health, family, relationships, prosperity, God, country, hobbies, etc. The order in which these things are ranked varies from person to person, but regardless of the order of ranking, everyone has a pinnacle of value, which is their proverbial God. Things that are ranked near the top of the hierarchy of value are not only seen as more important, but also serve as fundamental goals and motivations for one's daily behavior. Things that we value less are sacrificed for the sake of the things we value most. For a religious person, a theistic God is the pinnacle of that hierarchy. Therefore, everything he does is in service to that God. For a businessman who prioritizes wealth, all of his efforts are geared towards wealth creation. And for a drug addict, his entire life revolves around his drug addiction, at the expense of everything else. When one has a well-organized hierarchy of value, it becomes easier to prioritize what needs to be done and what can be compromised. By sacrificing things we value less for things we value more, we not only accelerate the achievement of our goals, but we also find a greater sense of fulfillment and meaning. When we fail to do this, we feel guilty and even hypocritical. Failing to live up to our principles not only undermines our self-efficacy, but it also causes us to lose our dignity. Remaining faithful to our principles provides us with a greater sense of meaning and purpose in the trials that we face in life. But what exactly is meaning? According to Jordan Peterson, meaning is when one brings order out of chaos to assemble something that is of greater value. Chaos occurs when an orderly system is too corrupt from all of its underlying unresolved issues. Those unresolved issues then accumulate into a proverbial dragon, which then threatens to destroy the system itself. An example would be a manager who ignores all the warning signs that his business is struggling, then is horrified when his business goes bankrupt. That bankruptcy is his chaos. If you take all that chaos, learn from it, and assemble a new order that takes into account the components that made up that chaos, you create meaning. An example would be arranging musical notes into a melody, or arranging letters into words that convey a message. Another example would be a state collapsing into civil war, only for a newer, better state to emerge from its ashes. From chaos, a better order emerges, like the unifying of yin and yang, or the unifying of the material and the transcendent, or the divine and human nature of Christ. Meaning is the harmonious integration of chaos and order. You can find this form of meaning in the creation of the universe. From space dust, planets and stars emerge. From carbon matter on Earth, life forms emerge. From primitive life forms, complex animals evolve. From animals, humans evolve. From humanity, a new world is created full of meaning that didn't exist before, whether it be science, technology, art, etc. He who can create transcendent order from the chaos of the cosmos is God, the ultimate purveyor of meaning. This is the God that Jordan Peterson believes in. Thus, Jordan Peterson approaches Christianity from the perspective of a secular psychologist. Specifically, he applies his knowledge of myths and metaphors, and combines them with psychoanalysis to discover deeper meaning behind the sacred text. He discovered that the Bible reflects truths that transcend the realm of religion and permeates even the secular world, that there is a certain divine order that governs the human experience. These truths are very much evident in his own experiences as a clinician. Slowly but surely, he began to believe in God, in his own unorthodox manner. In Peterson's view, meaning isn't created from scratch, at least not for us humans. We simply cannot invent our own meaning and values like the postmodernists suggest. We often lack the knowledge, wisdom, and discipline to consistently hold ourselves accountable to the values we create. And if we can't uphold our own values, then those values are useless. Instead, meaning is created when we make the most of the opportunities and trials we face in life. Therefore, we must take all the chaos, all the good, and all the bad that exists in our world and organize it into something that is meaningful and hopefully makes the world around us better. Or at the very least, we should at least try not to make it worse, for hell is a bottomless pit. Doing so allows us to make good use of all the good and bad things that happen in life and make it all worthwhile in the end. But these are just my interpretations of Jordan Peterson's work. Feel free to discuss your own opinions in the comments below. If you find this video interesting, you can check out my other videos and subscribe to my channel for more content in the future. Thanks for your support, and take care.